Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of building a tower defense game with me. This episode is gonna be kind of thick. It's about 40 minutes. It's feature dense. We're gonna be doing a lot of things. We're gonna make them ragdoll. We're gonna add a sniper turret, an explosive turret, and you can see it all in the background playing. It's gonna be a really fun episode. And I'm trying a new way of creating videos where I commentate as I code rather than code, then edit and voice over it. This way you can see how I'm thinking and stuff like that. It does make the record time and edit time so much faster, so it's better for me, and you can kind of see me make mistakes as we go. So it's more learning for you and easier for me, so it's a win-win. But it will take longer for videos, so it's about 40 minutes for this one, because I can't speed up footage and stuff like that. But I will try to keep adding some stuff to show you what's happening in the background. But yeah, just let me know if you prefer this video or the other ones, and I'll try to do that. But for the next few episodes, I'll be doing this style. Yeah, enjoy. Okay, let's begin. And actually, we're gonna be starting by diving right into the code. Our first change, well, the main bulk of our change, will come from the enemy controller script. This is one thing that we need to change is how the enemy reacts when they die. And right now they just disappear when you kill them. I don't want that. I want them to die by becoming a ragdoll, which is gonna look so much better. And I would like the ragdoll to react in physics based, so when you shoot the ragdoll it also moves and it stays around for about 2 minutes. I think that would be nice. So let's start coding from scratch. So the first thing we're gonna need to do is change this to public. We're gonna be accessing this from other classes. We're gonna change this to is alive, and we're actually gonna make it public as well. That just flows better, looks better as alive rather than was alive. Okay. Now let's add some variables for controlling the multiple different rigid bodies inside the ragdoll. So let's start. We're gonna be starting by creating a list of rigid body, which I'm gonna call it rag RBs, and we're just gonna be setting it to nothing for now. Something else we're gonna be accessing is a list of colliders. I'm gonna be calling it Ragdolls. Okay. Something else, we're gonna be needing a dictionary. Let's put on this side of rigid body and a pool. This will basically just remember what was kinematic, which is what we're gonna be calling it, and also blank. And then I'm gonna be saving the transform of the hips. We're gonna be using this to thrust them later when we do explosions, which is kind of a spoiler. We're gonna be doing explosions. Next is the animator, because we're gonna be needing to disable the animator when they die so they can flop around. And the same thing with the nav mesh agent, which we're going to be calling just agent. Okay, let's start now the actual coding itself. This can actually go here, because we're going to be using an on enable to be doing a bunch of other stuff, and I would like it to look clean. So first we need to assign these if they aren't already assigned. And then another one is the meter. Okay. And now let's add the ragdoll block. So if animator, then let's get all the components in the children children, and we're going to be setting them to true of the rag bodies. There we go. And next one is the same thing basically, but for the colliders. Okay, and then let's remove all bodies for each of the body from the game objects. This basically just skips the main one, basically the one that's in our main root object, which we want to keep. Yeah, that's correct. RB was static. The RB equaling to R dot is kinematic. So this we're just saving really what it was. So if it was true, we're going to be restoring it later to false, and if it was false, we're going to be restoring it later to false. Sorry, if it was true, we're going to restore it to true, and if it was false, we're going to restore it to false. So this is just saving all the data and then setting them all to true. And this will be where we get the hips, so we can just do is human, and then RB was schematic of the RB, same thing. Whoops, actually I'm gonna be doing hips here, sorry. Animator get bone transform, and then we're gonna get the human bones, so I'm gonna be getting the hips. There you go. And this is just a quick way to get the hips kind of object or transform. Okay, we actually don't need these, just make it look neat. And lastly, if there aren't hips, then we're just gonna be setting the hips to the transform of the animator, which is the main transform. Okay, this is super simple. All it does is set the two components, fetch all of the ragdolls, rigid bodies and colliders, and then we remove the main one, and then go over each rigid body, set it as kinematic, and save the data for the kinematic so we can restore it later. And we fetch the hip. That's really all this does when it is enabled. Okay, I'm gonna add a new check here. First of all, this one needs to move to up here because sometimes these skip. And we're gonna be changing this from setting it to active to calling the death function, which we're gonna be writing soon. Okay, that's all for this. Now let's actually write this we're going to be changing. We're no longer going to be calling on disabled, so we're going to change it to the death one, which is already done here. And now we're going to make it so that when it dies, it turns limp. So it just goes limp and kind of starts flopping like a fish, which is what we want. So first of all, when they do die, we do want to destroy the game object, but we're going to destroy it after 120 seconds, so that way it can stay for a while before misspell destroy. Okay, and then we're going to be disabling the collider so that when you do disable the rigid bodies, they start flopping and they have their own collider, so they're not actually where the parent object is, but the collider will be where the parent object is, so you're gonna basically have an invisible wall, which we don't want. So we're gonna just set it to false. And then we're gonna disable the agent and disable the animator. There we go. And what's next? Yeah, now we're gonna just make every rigid body not kinematic, so basically turning them into ragdolls so that it looks good. That's for each, my bad. Okay, so we set the is kinematic to false, and we're also gonna be detecting collisions, so that if something hits it, we detect it. And just to be extra sure, we're gonna be setting the collision detection mode to continuous dynamic. That's the best one that will detect anything moving directly through an object rather than at an angular, basically, kind of way. And we're gonna wake it up. That's basically all we need to do now, but kind of spoiler for the future. I'm gonna add one more function here so we don't have to come back to this, which is basically gonna be applying the explosion force when we call it. So we want it to be creating this kind of sphere of explosion whenever we call this function, and just apply that sphere all over the rigid bodies that we have. So it's going to go over through each rigid body that we do have, apply an explosion force to it so that it looks like we're blowing it up, basically. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So we're going to add a float of explosion force. Something else we're going to need is explosion position, so where the explosion is happening, and then explosion radius, and lastly we're gonna need explosion up force, so how much up force it has. Basically, it's kind of straightforward. Okay, and then we're just gonna go through every rigid body that we do have and apply the explosion, which is super easy. We're gonna be adding the hip boost here, which is the one I was speaking about earlier, which has like this explosion specifically to the hip, which will be 30% higher than everything else, so it looks like the hip is leading the explosion, which makes it look so much better, at least in my opinion. It's absolutely not necessary, but it just makes it look better. So basically this checks if the RB is the hips, and if it is, it's going to be setting it to 1.3. If not, it's going to be setting it to 1. Okay, now add the explosion, which we can do using explosion force. And just feeding it all of the stuff that we already have. There you go. That's all really that we need to do. And I don't know why it's removed the parentheses that. That's it. This works perfectly, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. So the next thing that we need to change, it's gonna be the enemy locomotion. Actually, it's a super simple change. There isn't much here that we need to change. The only things that we need to change is when active in hierarchy, we're actually going to be changing it to enemy script, or enemy controller is alive, or is not alive, sorry, because now we're not going to be disabling the object in the hierarchy. We're going to be setting it limp, so the object will be alive, but we do want it to stop running, because we don't want a rigid body or a ragdoll to be running towards the turret. That would be too terrifying. And some other stuff here that we do want to set is target. If it's null, we don't want it to be running, because that will cause some issues. And yeah, I think that's it. But actually, I'm just gonna copy this here, keep it here, and I'm gonna keep the other one, if the target isn't active in hierarchy, because I think maybe I might come back to this and do something. This line is not needed, but I'm keeping it because I know I'm gonna forget, and I'm gonna be pulling my hairs out trying to remember what was wrong. And just down here on one, We don't want the dead enemies to be celebrating, so we're gonna be checking if they're alive. And if they are not, then we just return. They didn't win, which is very sad. Okay, that's all the changes we need here on the enemy locomotion. The next one is gonna be the turret controller. So turret controller next. Okay, turret controller is actually super simple. There are some changes I want to do that will help us create different kind of turrets. So one turret that I really like, that I want to introduce, is a sniper turret, where you can zoom in and kind of use a sniper, which is kind of cool. Which, to do that, we're gonna need to add a few things. So let's keep it up here on the public so it looks neat. So let's add a float. We're gonna be calling it zoom multiply, and we're gonna be setting that to 4. And actually, we're gonna add a boolean that asks if we can zoom or if we can't. By default, this is false. And then we're gonna be adding a zoom speed, so how fast it zooms in. This is all for now, but one thing I do want to call, which we're gonna be using, I want to cache the enemy controller, just so we can always be referencing this in the script. I'm gonna show you why in a bit. Okay, so in start, there are a few things we need to check. So if the zoom is active, we want to set the camera. Oh, actually, I forgot to initialize the camera. So let's just create a Cinemachine camera and call it cam. We're going to be referencing this to do the zoom itself. We're going to be using the camera. And I think that's all for now. Actually, no, we do need one more thing, which is the original FOV. Because we're going to be changing the FOV, we want to know what the original one is, so we can go back to it. Okay, I'm sure if there's anything else that's missing, we're going to be finding it. So let's set the camera, which is super easy by getting the turret camera and just touching the Cinemachine. If you remember the other day, we did create the turret camera, so when you click it goes to the camera. And then we're going to be setting the original FOV as well. I think it's called field of view. Yep, there you go. And this will just be setting up the original FOV. Okay, so in the closest enemy, this we no longer use because again, they're not dead. I mean, they are dead, but they're still active in hierarchy. So we're gonna be changing it to current enemy scripts, which I did initialize, didn't I? I called it enemy controller. Oopsies. Dot is alive. So if they're alive, then just ignore it. And we're actually gonna be setting up the turret. Sorry, the enemy controller over here. Enemy controller. Yep, that's perfect. And actually, I think this one would be better called as current enemy scripts, because we do have this enemy controller, to be kind of confusing if we have both. This is called basically similarly. So let's just rename it. Okay. Create the component here, and then again, same problem here. We need to just double check if the enemy is null first of all, and if they are, then we need to check if is not null, and if they're not null, then we need to check if the enemy is alive. Whoops, it's enemy controller. And we need to check if the enemy controller is alive. Yeah, that's it. And then over here, after the for loop runs, we're just gonna set the current target not equal null, and we're gonna be setting the current enemy script to be equal to current target dot get component and control. There you go. Basically, when it runs through the check, it will check if the enemy is alive, and if they are alive, then it will set their controller to the current controller, so that we can reference it whenever we want. And then we have to create the zoom, basically. So over here, let's just create first of all, I want to move this here because I feel like this is a bulk that will make it look kind of ugly. So let's just call it player controlled camera. Just gonna feed that here, and we're gonna be calling this here just so it looks better. Okay, and after the fire, we're gonna be calling handle zoom. We're gonna be defining right now. So void handle zoom, and it will be a super simple script which basically just checks if the mouse right button is pressed, and if it is, then we just set the camera lens field of view. We're going to change the field of view and make it zoom in a bit, but we don't want it to zoom instantly, so we're going to be using the lerp method, which is very handy. So again, just check the cam field of view. And the way that FOVs work is that the lower the FOV, the more zoomed in you are. So we're going to basically do divide by the multiplier rather than multiply by the multiplier. I know it sounds confusing, but this makes sense for FOVs. And I'm going to be multiplying it by time for the speed, so it doesn't zoom super fast. And then else, if it's not that, then basically do the opposite. So copy this, paste, and instead of this, just that. And I think that's it for the script, really. We're going to be demonstrating this later. So we're done with turret control, done with the enemy locomotion and enemy controller. The last script is the turret projectile module. So this has a big chunk of stuff that we need to change, and actually not that big of a chunk, if I'm being honest. So let's start. First of all, we're going to be changing this, calling it bullet configs, just because that's a better name for it. And then we're going to be adding explosion configs to make the explosive bullets. So let's start. Here are some variables we're going to be needing to define. So first of all, explosion will be defaulted to false, and secondly, we need a range of explosion, which I'm pretty sure is better called as explosion radius, but I'm just gonna call it range because I like it and it's my code. So if you don't like it, change it in yours. Okay, and then the force of the explosion, basically how much it knocks people back. I think 40 is the best, really. I'm just gonna define it as 100 and then change it in the inspector. And then we're gonna be adding the up force, which is 20 is good. And then the damage. So we want the explosion to be dealing its own damage, and the bullet dealing its own damage. So if the explosive bullet hits someone, that does damage, and then the explosion does damage as well on top. So everyone else caught in the explosion takes damage from the explosion damage, but only the person that gets hit with the bullet, if anyone gets hit with the bullet, takes bullet damage from it as well. Okay, let's call it explosion damage, which I'm going to be setting to 20 for now. And then finally, the explosion itself. which I actually got already, and I have it from a YouTuber that made it. He has a 6-minute video on how to make this explosion. I just copied him literally word for word, so I'm just gonna include his link in the description rather than recreate what he did, and just maybe give him some more attention. Not that my 20 views is much attention, but yeah. Okay, and then lastly we're gonna be creating a layer mask, which we're gonna be calling... Actually, I don't think this is needed. Yeah, I don't think this is needed, so I'm ignore that. Okay. So we've initialized everything, but next we actually have to start coding the explosion itself. One thing that I do want to do is over here, the collision and the collision handler that we have right now, it's good, but if it pierces an enemy and hits another enemy, it will deal the exact same amount of damage. And while that's nice if you want to keep it, it works really well with the sniper. So if you shoot a sniper at an enemy, the bullet will pierce that enemy and go to the enemy behind him and hit him as well. But I don't like that it deals full damage to every enemy it hits. So I want to create like a damage fall off, which I'm literally just going to be calling damage fall off. Which what it does is, every time it penetrates an enemy, we will be dealing a little bit less damage to said enemy, the one after. So if max objects penetrate is bigger than 0, then we want damage fall off to basically equal float penetrate minus objects penetrated all divided by max objects penetrated. So this is super simple. What it does is, the amount of objects that it can penetrate will be subtracted from, the objects it did penetrate will be subtracted from the max objects that it can penetrate, and it will all be divided by the max objects it can penetrate. So if I show you, if the object it can penetrate is 4, and it went through no one yet, so 0, and then all of that will be divided by 4, that equals 1, which is basically 100%. So it will deal 100% damage. The next one will be basically 4, and then if it penetrated one person, all of it will be divided by 4. That will be equal to 0.75 or 75%. So it will deal 75% to the next person, and then 4 minus 2 by 4 is 50%, and so on and so on. So that's the multiplier, how that works. It's super simple. You can make it so much more convoluted and so much smarter, but I don't need to do that. It's super simple. And here we're going to be creating just a null check, because I realized sometimes it does still give you null even though I have a nullable over here. And we're actually going to check because sometimes if the enemy gets too close and you hit him and the bullet bounces back at you, it might deal damage to the turret, which we don't want. So we're going to be adding a collision check here to make sure that the component is not a turret, and if it's a turret then just don't deal damage to it. So the game object, compare tag, and call it turret. Even though I added a physics layer that literally makes it unavoidable that the bullet does not hit us, for some reason it still registers, which I don't like, so this basically handles that. And yeah, we're done with this bit. Now we're going to be adding over here the explosion settings. So if it's explosive, then we actually start doing the explosion logic. It's super simple. We're going to be getting all of the colliders that are in that range of the explosion sphere. Thankfully, Unity does give us an overlap sphere that goes through every single object that's within a certain range that's built like a sphere. So, literally an explosion. And then we're going to be setting it to the bullet's transform, like where the bullet has landed. And we're going to give it the explosion range. So this will get every single collider within that explosion range. Okay, and let's check next if the enemy... Oh, sorry. We need to have a list of all of the enemies that were hit. So let's create that, which will be a list of an int that we're gonna call enemies hit, and this will just basically make sure that we don't hit the same enemy twice. I'll make sure you import it, which I think is this one, the generic. Yeah. Because since Ragdolls have multiple rigid bodies per body part, this will actually get all of those colliders. And if you apply it to every single one of the colliders, you're gonna be dealing, instead of 20 damage, you're gonna be dealing, I think it's 11 colliders. So you're gonna be dealing 220 damage rather than 20, which is not what we want. Also, you're gonna be dealing explosion damage to each one of them 11 times, which we don't want. So this will make sure that it's all unique enemies that we do apply through. Okay, and then we can just current enemy ID. This is to hold the current one, which is just gonna be setting to -1, because that's non-existent. Okay, now let's actually go create a for each loop, which for each collider and the colliders. We're gonna get the controller. There we go. And then if the enemy is null, we're gonna current enemy ID, enemy.get instance ID. That just gets us the ID of the current enemy, which we're going to be adding if we apply the damage to the enemy. So let's do that. Collider.compare tag. This is just to prevent us from applying damage to the turrets, because again, if the enemy is too close and you set up the explosion to be right in front of you, it will deal damage to the turret as well, which we don't want. So we're going to skip the turret using that one. And the enemy is null. And we don't hit the same enemy twice. Contains current enemy. There you go. And this way we just avoid hitting the same enemy twice and prevent all of the stuff that I was talking about earlier. Okay. What's next? So now that we're going to be applying that to the enemy, let's actually add the enemy ID to the enemy's hit and create a collider. Actually, apply the damage to the collider, which basically will be applying exactly how we did up here. So why don't I just copy it? But instead of this, actually, don't we... Yeah, we use this one, so you can just call this. What? I'll keep it like this. I prefer it this way. Okay, and actually, yeah, let's just keep it. So it's the same thing, basically, doing this or this. I'm just gonna keep it this way. Okay. If the enemy, my stats, health is less than or equal to 0, then we're gonna trigger their death, which I don't think we've set to public, right? Yeah. There you go. And this is basically so the enemy would go limp before we apply the explosion to them, because if we don't do this, then the explosion will kill them but not fling them, which we don't want. We do want to see them get flung because that's fun. So gonna be apply the explosion force and basically just feed everything here. So explosion position will actually be the bullet's position, and then next we'll have the explosion range, and then the up. Yep. There you go. And that basically covers the explosion stuff for it. And then down here, if it is explosive, we do want to show the explosion, right? Because explosions are cool. I'm gonna instantiate the explosion. There you go. Which is actually called explosion prefab before. How do I spell explosion? And did we call it explosive? It's supposed to be explosive, not explosion. Sorry. Yeah, explosion down here. There you go. And then we do the explosion dot position dot transform the position. Sorry. And we're gonna be setting it to the bullets position, and then we're gonna be destroying the explosion after 2 seconds. We'll just ensure the explosion actually plays the animation before it dies. And I think we're done. Okay, that's it. We are done. Let's test it out. Where's Jennifer? It's right here. Okay, it's taking its sweet time. I don't know why it's been taking like up to 20 to 30 seconds to just do this, although it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be so much faster. Unity 6.2 has been a pain, honestly. It keeps crashing on me. There's so much changes that were just robbed of me, basically. Okay, so here we have 3 different turrets, which I just created before the video, just to show you the different configurations. This is the basic turret, the one that we've been using so far, which basically nothing really has changed here. I haven't set anything for it. And the sniper turret, this basically just has the zoom enabled, the zoom multiplier increased, and zoom speed set to 10. And I've dropped the fire rate like crazy, increased the range and the leave range, and increased the damage by a lot. See, compared to this one, it does 5 times. Oh wait, that doesn't add up. 6 times the damage. Okay, and the explosive turret is basically just has explosive on, and all of the stats. And again, this explosion object has been created by the YouTuber, which I'm gonna leave in the description. You can just watch him. I copied him literally line for line. And yeah, that's it. The only thing left is to set up the characters correctly. So if I show you the enemy prefabs, so this is the hardened enemy from last time. As you can see, he looks very different. So the way you set this up is, let me unpack this for you guys. So first of all, you need to make sure the tag is enemy and the layer is enemy. With the turrets, you need to make sure the tags are turret and the layer is player. And again, just make sure that your physics options are configured, like I said in the last episode. And next, in your animator, actually before we talk about the animator, make sure you go to the model that you got. This one is from Miximo. And then click on rig and change it to humanoid and apply. This is very important. And I'll show you why in a second. In the animator now, you can actually apply the humanoid that you've just set up. And when you double click it, you can actually now go to the 3D object. When right clicking your enemy, go to 3D object, and you can apply a ragdoll and select your enemy's animator, which you can just drag and drop here. And after doing that, you can see it's all not assigned, but then you can just click autofill and it will fill them all up for you, and then hit create. And then after doing that, make sure you remove this avatar. You have to remove it after assigning it. Otherwise it will make it act very weird, and I don't know why, but I found that removing it fixed it, which took me way too long to figure out, but I'm just telling you, you have to remove it. Okay. And then that's it, really. So let's actually test it out. First of all, we're gonna click play, And I'm gonna show you the sniper turret first and how it operates. So here you go, here's a sniper turret. Oh, this is actually the explosion turret. You saw the explosion. But yeah, so let's go and click the sniper turret, which you can't actually see over here. Oh, that's a sniper turret. If you click it, something else that's really fun to play with as well is if we set the turret to have so much more fire rate. So like 8 is kind of crazy. I can just keep shooting the bodies and they... Actually, let's give it 6,000 for this force. Look at that. This is so much fun. Yeah, the game's already shaping up to be so much better. But die! As you can see, it did penetrate there. It penetrated this guy and killed this guy behind him as well, which is how the sniper is supposed to work. Yeah, it works perfectly. I can't remember what the error here is, so let me just double check the code. If no zoom, no return. I should fix that error. Unless if we use the sniper, unless we get the error, then I have no idea what the problem is. Oh, that is the problem, because we don't set the camera if there isn't the zoom function. I just didn't test it before, so good thing I was testing it. Here, if there is the zoom, it sets the camera and the FOV. If we don't, then it will have an error fetching this because this is null basically. So either add this, or better yet, just actually no, we do need that because then they can just zoom in even if the other one isn't enabled. So yeah, just to make sure that if it's not zoomed, then you just return. And then we can test it. Okay, good thing I caught that because I wasn't actually testing any turret that didn't have zoom enabled. See, I'm learning as well. But it should work now. So if I click this, yeah, no more errors. And it doesn't zoom. But if I click this guy, no more errors, and it does zoom. Perfect. And let me try to show you there. Right. Let me try to get a better example of the penetration just so we can have a look at it together. Where is the penetration script? It should be here. The depth is 5 and max objects penetrate is 3 and it's at 150 damage, which means the second person should deal 100 damage exactly to them, which should be enough to kill one of the blue guys, like penetrate someone and kill the blue guy. So let's see. Yeah, my math is correct. It should be enough to kill a blue guy, but they just have to line up for me. Back. Click this. Line up. There, I killed 2. There we go. And that explosion got him. There, I killed 3 there. That's amazing. Okay. Yeah. So that's all really for me now. Again, thank you guys for watching. Tell me if you like the new commentating style. It does take so much. It's so much faster to do this without editing, uncut. And I feel like I do explain everything as we go. We explain more. I save time. You learn more. It's a win-win. So let me know if you guys enjoy this, or if you prefer me going back to the other way. But I think for the next few episodes, I'm going to be doing it like this, except for the devlog, which is coming up. Yeah. Thank you again for watching. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. If you want, you can join the Discord. I am active there. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you in the next one. See ya.